How's the hair? Is it too like fucking out?
It's fine.
I can just feel it on the side of my neck, which is not normal, so.
Ready when you are.
Aye, aye, Captain. What's up, guys? Happy New Year to you guys. Today we're starting the year off on a really good foot. We're working on the streetcar hatch. Tyler and myself have been working on getting this thing dialed in, make it look as good as possible. We got our brand new Koenig wheels on it. As soon as they came in, the kit is all mounted, ready to be wrapped. While we've been working on getting the car looking good, just driving it around, we found some mechanical gremlins. Just recently I took it to the car wash and I washed it off, everything, and it would not restart afterwards. Couldn't figure out why. We ended up unplugging all the injectors, and I just dry ran it because it smelled like fuel on the one we popped the hood. And I dry ran it, and then it started. And it ran for a couple seconds with no fuel injectors hooked up. So the cylinders are just filling up with fuel. So we've got some kind of fueling issue going on. I have some theories. If I had to guess, I would say there's a fuel pressure regulator issue. I'm told that the fuel pump is massive, way too big for what we're working with. Like a fuel regulator is basically just a relief valve. So if the relief seat isn't big enough to return all the extra fuel that this big pump's sending back, then it's just gonna start raising the pressure a ton and then dumping so much more into the cylinders. So that's my theory. So I've got a fuel pressure regulator and some fittings coming in the mail here in a couple of days. I'm gonna take it for a rip real quick and see if we can simulate the issues now that it's not wet from the car wash. Actually, I got some rad Christmas presents from the family and from my girlfriend this year for this. My entire Christmas list was for the streetcar hatch, so I got some checkered P2M floor mats, and we've got some in the hatch to match as well. We've got the whole hatch mat, just try to make this thing as street as possible and look cool while we're doing it. So yeah, stoked about that for sure. All right, now, if my theory is correct, it will not start right now. So, it smelled like fuel super bad, the whole drive, so. Yeah, we'll see. Of course. Reliable. Nothing ever works when it needs to.
Nothing ever breaks when it needs to.
Yeah, it's like when you take a car to a mechanic shop and your car's like broken all the time and you're like, yeah, sir, this is what it's doing. And he's like, yeah, sorry, I couldn't replicate the problem. You can just take it and come back later and try again. That's how I feel right now. Stupid. Well, I already ordered the fuel pressure regulator. It's getting it anyways. I hate cars so much. 240 stock. This brings me back to 2012, where everywhere I went, the car wouldn't start, and then we could never fix it. This is great. This is great. So here's the real moment of truth. You want to know if it's actually going to not work? Whenever you really put yourself out there, drive to a gas station, turn it off with no way to get home, unless it starts again. So if it starts, I'm going to be angry. We'll see. But because we're at a gas station, it almost can't start. If you've owned a 240, you know what it's like.
It would just be too easy.
I hate it here. I hate it here so much.
Hey, at least we can get back.
You see this face? This is the face of when the camera's off, it doesn't, and it didn't start. And it started, and it chugged, and it died immediately. Room it again. I didn't lie. Theory tested.
Theory proven.
It's real. This Chinese bumper goes over my hood prop I can't get to. All right, all the injectors are unplugged. Now it'll start, it'll run for 1 to 3 seconds, and die. Told you.
Calling your shots out here.
Come on. So now all we're gonna do is we're just gonna plug them back in and it'll start and run just like normal. So obviously there's so much fuel in there that it had absolutely flooded itself out, and it just took a little bit of driving to get it to do that. So I'm a firm believer of the regulator is just not relieving enough fuel, and it's overpressurizing itself, which causes the injectors to spit way more in there than they're supposed to. So when I get this fuel pressure regulator on Wednesday, 2 days from now, we'll get this thing put in and we'll try it again, see what happens. Wouldn't be an S chassis if it worked all the time. I hate it here. Factory door chime, baby.
Listen to that chime.
Well, this car is kind of awesome though, because everything works, including the factory door chime. This car was bone stock. I know I kind of said something about it last video. This car was bone stock when I got it, and it was a turd. And we cleaned this thing all the way up. This car belonged to my friend and his girlfriend like 10 years ago, and they parked it, and they ended up selling it for like nothing, and then it sat in this other dude's house forever and ever, and then a friend of mine bought it for a really good deal, and I bought it from him for a really good deal. And I'm just gonna bring this thing back to life and make it like a sick street car. So I'm super stoked. My friend's legacy gets to live on, and yeah, love me a good stock hatch. This was my first drift car ever, was a stock hatch. So I've wanted one ever since. I wanted like a rad one. But I've bought a couple, but it's always been like the wrong timing where I have to immediately sell it because I need money. So I figured now's the time I'm gonna build one and actually try to keep it. We'll see if I actually do that or not. All right, so we're gonna stop right there and we're gonna swing back in on Wednesday and give you guys a little bit of YouTube magic when the parts get here, and then we'll get it all fixed. So see you in 30 seconds for you. Rolling. All right, guys, we're back. It's Thursday. We got all our parts in. It's been kind of a sad week here. The car guys lost one of the great influencers, Ken Block. Definitely a sad thing to see. Definitely one of my biggest inspirations growing up and getting into racing, with the whole Gymkhana stuff, all the hoonigan stuff, and just really, in my eyes, changed the way that the car scene was going and put it into a very creative direction as far as car design and content creation and everything. So it's definitely a sad week for us, and we're definitely thinking about his family and all the guys over at Hoonigan. Okay, so parts we got for it, we got a private labeled, fresh, infamous private label fuel pressure regulator. It's dash 6 in, dash 6 out, fuel lab gauge on it. So I got some 5/16 adapter for the side and the bottom, and then just a dash 6 plug for the other side, because we're just gonna treat it as an in and an out. We don't need to do both sides. I also made a purple cover for it, which is rad also. So yeah, we got some fuel injector O-rings and then some grommets for the bottom as well that they sit in, because this thing's a 92, so they're probably wrecked. So yeah, me and Tyler are gonna start tearing it apart. One part that did not show up is our adapter for at the end of the fuel rail that takes off the OEM fuel pressure regulator and then allows us to run this one. So we're gonna do what any friend would do and steal it off a friend's car until the other one comes in. For those of you who don't know, on a fuel pressure regulator, for this specific style, the two sides are inlets inlets, or you can go through one side, come out the other. Just depends how you want to run it. The bottom is always your return line, and then your pressure is based off of how hard you twist this in or out. So there's a spring in here and it pushes down on a seat, which creates higher or lower pressure. So the more you screw it down, it makes it tighter and makes your fuel pressure go up. The more you loosen it, it goes down. So it's pretty straightforward. Bracket comes on it, and this thing's pretty decent. So we're gonna do a 5/16 in the side, 5/16 out the bottom, and then plug the other side. So should be pretty easy. Let's get to it. It's a good thing we've got new grommets and insulators, because these grommets are absolutely chooched. Rubber's just ripped all over the place, and this was definitely, if it wasn't our problem, it was a problem for sure. So we'll get all 4 of these changed out. We got new ones for it. I don't think we're gonna do injector O-rings on it, just because a couple of these screws are nice and existingly stripped. And we've got new injectors that are gonna come in whenever we throw the new turbo kit on this thing. So we'll just get this thing put back together as is and throw some new grommets in there and figure out how we're gonna mount the regulator.
Perfect.
All right, so here's like our factory fuel rail, and you have your inlet right here, and the fuel runs around this, in this tube, through the fuel rail, and it pressurizes with this fuel pressure regulator right here that bolts onto the end. And then the pressure created in there, it allows to spray out the injectors into each individual runner. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take these 2 screws out and pull this factory junk fuel pressure regulator out, and we're gonna put this adapter in that allows us to just go straight through instead of having to go through a regulator, which we are going to be getting one from ISR. Just hasn't come in the mail yet. This nice borrowed boy is off Michael's SR, and then we'll get this thing put in and figure out where we're going to mount the regulator. I think we're thinking about mounting the regulator right here on the firewall, but there's no really good spot to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to straighten this thing, this bracket, straight out and mount it on the pinch weld right here, so it sits nice and pretty here in the bay, just like this. So you can still adjust on the fly real easily and still see your fuel pressure on the gauge very easily. So let's get to it. Okay, so this is the bracket from the fuel pressure regulator. It's obviously designed to mount straight to the firewall. And in order for us to mount it how we want to, we got to get this bent down to straight. We're gonna try to smash this part in the metal brake and see if that'll work. If not, we may have to resort to a vise and a hammer. It'll be a little bit uglier, but maybe we'll throw some black paint on it to make it look a little bit better. This is definitely not what you're supposed to do.
They probably have like a joke to see like how little you can actually do.
Well, it's not great, but it came out better than I anticipated. Actually, I don't know. We're gonna have to resort to the hammer and a vise, I think, because this is pretty ugly. Good enough for me. We'll just mount it like this. It'll just have to have a little bit of a step in it, but it'll be good. It'll be good. So we're gonna mount it right here on this little pinch weld. So it'll sit pretty much just like this, and then the regulator will be right in front of it. So we're gonna try to keep it as clean as possible. We're gonna use rib nuts, which is basically like a rivet, but it has like threads inside of it. So it'll keep it basically to where you won't have to like nut and bolt it. It'll make it look as clean as possible, and I guess, if you will, as professional as possible. So we're gonna mark this thing up, start drilling some holes, and make it happen. Okay, so we got it all on, all set up. We got it set to the factory fuel pressure settings, which is 43 PSI with no vacuum. And then once you hook it up at idle speed with vacuum, it's supposed to be at 33, which we're pretty dang close to, right on the money. So we're gonna give this thing the ultimate test, and we're gonna drive it to dinner. Let it sit outside, drive it back, make sure everything's all good to go. Also, you guys saw the B-roll on the new infamous fuel pressure regulators. They're gonna be for sale soon, so if anybody is interested in one, hit me up. We might even do a little bit of a pre-order. Price, I don't know yet, but they're sick. And they are high quality, US made, lifetime warranty. We've never had a failure in 20 years, so we should be good to go. All right, let's take this thing to dinner. train tracks, it's approximately a quarter mile. So slow. Moment of truth. Food is over. Didn't fix it. Nope. What's our next plan of attack now? I don't know. Ready? Yep. That's a really weird problem.
Gotta be leaky fuel injectors, right?
I feel like that's. I mean, I feel like that's what it has to be. It has to be a leaky injector because
It's just draining all the fuel from the fuel rail into the intake runner while it's sitting there. And when you go to crank it over again, it won't start.
well, and half the time you click the starter and it won't turn over because it's like a form of hydro lock or something. Because if you look at the fuel pressure regulator, it immediately drops to like 10 psi. So if an injector's leaking off, never did that before.
Yeah, don't do it anymore.
We got a bad starter too. We got a lot of bad luck too. Well, to touch on our subject of possible leaky injectors, I'm gonna eBay some Chinese fuel injectors. $44. I can't not buy it. So place the order on those. We'll get those suckers put in this thing and see if, I don't know. At this point, we're just guessing. I hope we're right. Theoretically, the only other thing that it could be would be the fuel injectors just leaking off into the cylinders, because we've done the regulator. We know that that's not an issue anymore. It's not too high of a fuel pressure, but it's overpressurizing. It's got to be that. Half the parts are made in China anyways, right? What's a cheap Chinese injector? Worth a shot. Well, we're gonna finish the video off there, guys. If you like this video, give it a like, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and watch us get this S13 dialed in, and then we will move on to the empty car. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.